We invest a lot of money into ourselves as veterinary professionals, but we don't invest anything into the actual person who's playing the role of the veterinarian.
Welcome to Vet Life Reimagined. Have you ever felt overwhelmed but didn't quite have the words to explain it? That quiet, heavy sense that something isn't right, but you can't quite name it. As Brene Brown says, name it to tame it. Today's guest, Dr. Quincy Hawley, will share his experience with these exact struggles. As a new veterinary graduate, Quincy found himself in a stressful, isolating place, surrounded by others who were also struggling, but without the language to call it what it was, burnout. What changed everything, though, was discovering the power of personal development, community, and connection. Through that journey, Quincy didn't just find words to name what he was experiencing, he found the tools to rebuild his identity, strengthen his resilience, and ultimately create a mission-driven company called Get Motiveted, focused on empowerment within the veterinary profession. Quincy believes that true well-being isn't about avoiding challenges, it's about developing the ability to thrive despite them. And what makes his story even more powerful is that he didn't wait until he had all the answers before taking action. He simply started, one conversation, one connection, one courageous step at a time. If you care about the future of veterinary medicine, emotional resilience, and creating a more sustainable profession, you'll want to lean into this episode. So let's get to the conversation with Dr. Quincy Hawley. When did you first realize you were interested in veterinary medicine?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much, Megan. And it started like so early in my life, like my love for animals and things like that. So I'm from a small town in North Carolina called Oxford, 3 exits off of the interstate, Highway 85. And I was born into a family with over 20 animals. So we had beagles because my dad and brother, they were big rabbit hunters. We lived on 6 acres, kind of out in the country. And for all of the country people out there, you already know, like if you live in the country, you're gonna see wild animals, and lots of them, typically from reptiles like little lizards and things like that, to snakes and possums and deer and rabbits and squirrels, like anything you could. And it came to my yard at some point. And from there, when I went to college, I decided to do animal science, right? Because I just love animals so much. And my freshman year, the chairman of animal sciences, he saw all my GPA, and he asked me if I'd ever thought about going to veterinary school. And that hadn't really crossed my mind. And so I was like, I hadn't thought about that. And he kind of set out that path for me to get into that veterinary science and things like that. And so that's kind of like that first inkling of, always loved animals, but that was like my first big thing of I can actually become a veterinarian,
Yeah. Well, that actually makes sense because you had mentioned that you had some pretty interesting experiences early on that were part of your journey. And you talked about meeting the director of DEI at NC State at a career fair. And you
Yeah.
mentioned something
Yeah.
about having a pitiful resume. And
Oh
so,
my gosh, dude.
and
If you can even call it a resume, it's like some words on the page,
yeah,
basically.
well, and that makes sense if you didn't really think about veterinary medicine until
That's
college.
right.
You
That's right.
weren't necessarily like super active in getting all of this experience. But since that story kind of resonated with you when we were talking about your career journey, do you mind reflecting and sharing a little bit about that and how you were starting to discover interest and network within the profession?
Yeah, absolutely. So after the chairman of animal science is mentioned, the veterinary path in and of itself, one of the big things that he told me was to go get like summer internships. And I had never had a summer internship before. And so I ended up doing like a little summer internship at a small animal hospital in my hometown. And then the next year, I wanted to apply for something cooler. Like I had friends who were going to work for Kraft and Dow Agrosciences and all these cool veterinary schools and things like that. And I was like, I'm going to give that a shot. And so I applied for like a bunch of summer internships, and lo and behold, like letter after letter after letter of declination came in. So I got 6 letters of declination from all the summer internships I was applying for. And I was pretty discouraged. And I remember talking to one of my advisors in animal sciences. He was like, "Go to the career fair, walk around, see what you can find." And that's where I actually found Dr. Alan Kennedy, who's kind of like my big mentor. He was the director of like multicultural services at the veterinary school and things like that. And he was at a table with Dr. Roberto Morales from the USDA APHIS Veterinary Services. So I introduced myself to them. I got that internship, and I was working with NC State, so I got to go out to the teaching animal unit, work with the small ruminants and stuff like that. It was really cool. I got to do some cool things with the USDA, and they actually flew me out to Ames, Iowa, to work at the National Veterinary Services Laboratories, and that was a really cool experience where I got to sit 2 rows behind Tom Vilsack, who was the Secretary of Agriculture at the time, and just really see a completely different side of veterinary medicine than most people are used to at that early stage in your career.
Yeah. So initially, were you kind of thinking small animal? You mentioned growing up with beagles and things like that, and your horizons are starting to broaden. So from that, did you have an idea of what you wanted to do, or were you like, okay, now I just know there's lots of opportunities. I'm just gonna like keep doing the next step.
Yeah, so up until the summer after my freshman year, I worked at the small animal hospital. My brain is still very limited in terms of the scope of veterinary medicine and things like that, right? Because I have the agricultural experiences as being an animal science major, but it's not necessarily veterinary medicine because most people are going to do animal industry and things like that. And so it was really just kind of thinking like, okay, I'll just be a veterinarian, work on dogs and cats at this point. And then when I got that summer experience of going out to the USDA and went to NC State, and Dr. Kennedy, he's a small ruminant and camelid specialist. He's probably like one of the best on the East Coast. And I would ride out with him in the mornings to work with on like little small goat farms and things like that. And so I really enjoyed working with goats and sheep a lot more than I enjoyed being in the small animal hospital setting because it's outside and I'm a country boy. I'm used to being outside and things like that. And I was like, oh, I can do veterinary medicine and not be in a tiny like building the whole time, you know?
Yeah. Although I mean, from my understanding, your first job out of vet school was in small animal medicines. So what
I'm pretty
happened?
sure. So, yeah. So I got into veterinary school, and I actually did another internship after the USDA NC State one where I was working with Elanco Animal Health. I was a sales rep basically for their main dairy product. It's called Rumensin. You more milk per pound of feed, 3 to 4 pennies per head per day. I still remember that pitch a little bit, but I would basically go and interview like dairy nutritionists, dairy veterinarians, and dairy feed sales reps and things like that, right? And at the feed mills. And so it was getting me more and more into the sort of food animal realm. And so when I went to veterinary school, when I finally got in, I was a food animal focused student. So a lot of my experiences in veterinary school are with beef cattle, dairy cattle, swine, goat, sheep, the food animals, right? A little bit of poultry. So in my senior year of veterinary school, doing all the externships, I did this huge dairy externship up in Michigan. So I remember always waking me up in the middle of the night, like boom, boom, boom on the door to do C-sections of cows in the freezing cold. And I just thought to myself, like doing cow surgeries is so cool, first and foremost, but um, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this as like a married man with a family in the freezing cold in North Carolina, like all by myself. And so I graduated from veterinary school and went immediately into small animal. So I really appreciate all of my large animal experiences, but I think small animal just fit a little better, if you will, at the time at least. So, yep,
So you had the revelation. Um,
I have the revelation.
or I think all of us probably have some type of memory, even if it's from vet school. Sorry, you brought back memories for me, like in vet school, being the one student on call, and you get the
Oh my
C-section in the
gosh.
middle of the night, and I
Yes,
remember
yes.
like holding the innards on the cold floor. Anyway, yes, yes. It just takes one to know, okay, don't want to do this the rest of my life.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
But anyway, so okay, so you had your revelation and you graduate from vet school and you get your first job. What is that like?
Well, it was super cool because my wife's also a veterinarian, and we were working at the same hospital together, which is really cool. So we had 7 amazing doctors at the corporate hospital that I was working at, and the owner was amazing. He was such a good mentor in terms of like the clinical medicine and the surgery, and most importantly, like how do you communicate well with clients? He was a ninja master, talking very smooth with the clients and things like that, and they just absolutely loved them. And so I always like paid attention to that because I wanted to be like that with the clients as well. But anyway, the downside of going to that practice was that it was extremely, extremely, extremely busy. So as a new grad, I was seeing 25 to 35 cases a day, like within like that second week of actually being there. So that first week, they kind of, warm you up a little bit. And then it's like, you're in the loop at this point. And on my surgery days, I was doing about 5 to 15 anesthetic procedures a day between dentals and actual like surgeries and things like that. And the big thing was that because I didn't have like a lot of well-being tools and strategies and tactics and resources and principles and things like that, I got burnt out very, very quickly. And I didn't have the healthy ways of coping. I actually chose alcohol to deal with that, right? And so I would literally leave work, go to the first gas station that I would see on the way home, get an alcoholic beverage, I poured it in a cup, and I would drink and drive on the way home. And before I knew it, the days would turn to weeks, weeks would turn to months, and those months would turn to about 2.5 years of living that way. And it was affecting my marriage poorly. My wife and I were thinking about divorce. We had our 1-year-old daughter at the time. And so it was just a, a true subpar life of mediocrity is what I call it. And that lasted through till November of 2016. So from 2013 when I graduated until like November of 2016. And it really kind of sucked because that's not why you come into the profession, right? Like you never really see that future for yourself, but that's where I was.
Yeah, and I remember you saying like all you knew was you were supposed to show up to work, do the work, and go home, and that
Yeah.
was it.
Yeah.
Your wife too was probably stressed because she was dealing with work as well, but still, that's hard. So what was it that kind of got you out of this point?
That's a great question because if you're one of those veterinarians right now or veterinary professionals who is like me and the rest of my team at that time, there may not be anyone on your team who even understands well-being or burnout or how to help you at all. So I think this is really important. And we were staying like an hour, 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours late, like every single day. There's just a life and you have to be back there at 8 o'clock in the morning. And so for me, ended up discovering what I call personal development, right? Which is just in my opinion, if I had to define it, it's the act of just doing lots of learning and focus and really prioritizing the human aspect of yourself. So like we're all veterinary professionals. We study the veterinary science and things like that really hard. We invest a lot of money into ourselves as veterinary professionals, but we don't invest anything into the actual person who's playing the role of the veterinarian, right? Or the veterinary professional. And so I just really got heavily into that. The first thing that really keyed me off, I remember it was an infomercial. How about that? An infomercial, right? Like the Gen Zers probably don't know what an infomercial is, but anyway, it was Joyce Meyer, and she's like one of those evangelists, and she was talking about the battlefield of the mind, and I remember her saying something like, "Where the mind goes, the man follows," and she was talking about something called like stinking thinking, and so I just really got into like this mindset aspect. What is the battlefield of the mind? Like, what does it actually mean? And as I went down that path, I discovered more books and more people to listen to through podcasts and YouTube videos. And that was kind of like the main thing that kind of kicked me off into that realm a little bit. And from there, it's just been complete history, right? I'm still addicted to personal development and trying to reach my full potential and just learning skills that allow me to thrive despite the challenges that are thrown at me. And I think that's like the ultimate like key or secret to life, honestly, right? It's like, how do you thrive despite the difficulties?
Yeah, this is something I related to as well, because like, I remember the moment I discovered personal development, and some people may laugh at some of these little sayings, but they stick. It's that little sticky reminder that will follow you into those moments of challenge. But,
Okay. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and the
Mhm.
reaching outside of veterinary medicine sometimes for
Yes.
that
Yes.
perspective, I think is also helpful, because that's where I started. Like, I wasn't picking up veterinary books. I was picking up these, you know, motivational speaker kind of books, and
Yeah,
things.
exactly.
And it just kind of puts you in a different frame of mind that allowed you to
Yes.
kind of step back for a moment
Right.
and look at it from a different angle so that you could make a different next move.
Yes. Yes. I think like personal development, it's a door that leads to more doors, and behind each door is something awesome that leads you to, it's like it just branches out, right? You meet one person, and then that person maybe can introduce you to other people who can also who have like a message or a lesson and things like that. And so it just became this huge like branching out experience where it just really opens up life. And I'm so glad I discovered it. I will always talk about this and encourage other people to discover personal development. And one of the books that I discovered early on was The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles, because a part of like my personal development journey was wanting to do better in my finances, in my relationships, with my health, the full picture. And he also wrote a book called The Science of Being Great. And that book has just been astronomical to me. And there's a quote in the book where he says that man is formed for growth, and he is under the necessity of growing. It is essential to his happiness that he should continuously advance, and that life without progress becomes unendurable. In the person who ceases from growth must either become imbecile, like stupid, or insane, and that the greater and more harmonious and well rounded his growth, the happier man will be or people will be. And so I really took that to heart. And I have Wallace Waddle quotes in every single presentation that I do because they had such a astronomical impact and a positive impact on my life. And so I love to share those things.
Yeah. Well, and you started talking about, just influences in life. And I feel like that might also be a little bit of a theme for your story, definitely, but a lot of stories. I'm actually writing an article about this. So you're also, while you're working, you kind of get a unique opportunity to join some different organizations and
Yes.
start to get involved with some AVMA things. And so, kind of interesting enough, I think I have the date right, around 2016, you get nominated to be president of the North Carolina Association for Minority Veterinarians. And
Yeah.
I did not know this. So is this still the case? Is North Carolina still the only state to have a minority vet association?
Yeah. We're still the only one. And the president is Dr. Andrea Gentry, also North Carolina A&T graduate and an NC State CVM graduate as well. And she's amazing, doing amazing things with the organization. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you mind sharing a little bit about how you got involved there, and then all of the
Yeah.
like trickle down connections to the
Oh my gosh. There are like so many. It's like an intricate web. We need like AI to like draw out a tree or something like that. Okay. So I used to go to the meetings. The NCMA, I have like two meetings each year, like a fall and a spring meeting. And Dr. Kennedy, my mentor from earlier, from the internship, the small ruminant guy, right? He was the president. And so he would always invite us out to the meetings. And so I would go to the meetings. It's a great opportunity to network. We would have like a speaker come in and do like some CE credits and things like that. And one of the speakers was, I think her name was Beth Sabin, Dr. Beth Sabin from the AVMA. She came down and she was telling me about the emerging leaders opportunity to go up to Illinois for the Veterinary Leadership Conference, and I applied for it, and I ended up getting that position. And so when I went there, it was just an opportunity to network with so many cool people from the AVMA, and when I got back on like the next meeting for the NCAMV, they asked me to talk about my experience of actually going there. And so I stood up and talked about how cool it was to meet people like Betsy Charles, who's really big for, I think it's the VLI, Veterinary Leadership Institute. She's an amazing person. I think I met some other people, maybe Dr. Marie Holloway-Chuck, who's one of the goats of well-being for veterinary medicine. And I just became really inspired, right? But anyway, Dr. Fuller, he's one of the older veterinarians within NCAMV. He nominated me to be president for NCAMV because I was going out and doing these different things with the AVMA. And I accepted that nomination. And then I was the president over the next, like maybe, I think about 5 or 6 years. From there, I really had the bug to go and explore. And so I learned a lot of things about like business entrepreneurship, and a lot about business entrepreneurship is about networking, right? Like going out and expanding your network. And if you graduate from veterinary school and you go into a small animal hospital, the networking really isn't something that's talked about much. I don't think for the average like associate veterinarian. It's like you go there and you work there for a long time. Maybe you switch hospitals. Maybe you buy into a hospital or buy your own practice, but networking wasn't really talked about much, right? When those first 5 years of me being in that corporate hospital. But when I networked and I went to these different places in Schaumburg, and I went to it was called the Fix the Debt Summit in Lansing, Michigan. And that was back in 2016. You get to meet deans of veterinary schools and, the C-level leadership for the company that I was working for, right? And I got to meet Janet Donlin, the CEO of the AVMA at that time. We're just sitting at the same table. I have no idea who she is, right? Because I'm just going to work every single day. And then I introduced myself to her, and she introduced herself to me. And then she introduces me to like a lot of other people. She like kind of elevated me up. And I saw that veterinary medicine was more than what was within that corporate hospital wall. And so that was really, really cool.
Yeah. Um, it is a really cool spark to go to the first conference where you're really able to network. And I do think sometimes the smaller ones, it's like if you are an introvert, go to the smaller ones because
Yeah.
it's almost like it's a lot more natural that it just happens.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes at the large conferences, it's easier to go find a corner and hide.
Right, right,
But
right.
yeah, so you were going to these like smaller, more intimate conferences where, a really diverse range of people with different backgrounds are coming and obviously not afraid to introduce themselves and start to introduce you to other people. And I think people actually like to introduce people,
Yeah.
like, that
Especially in vet med.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a really cool part of your story. Now, we're starting to like feel better. We're going into personal development, but you have like a really big career pivot too. So how does that happen? How do you start to pull together everything that you're getting from personal development, the networking experience, your mind is being broadened by entrepreneur ideas? Like, how does that start to influence your next choice or decision and steps?
It's very simple. So the personal development, it literally saved my life, right? Like I was having suicidal ideation, um, just from feeling so just like, is this all there is? Like stuck in that burnout and just overall poor well-being, and alcohol is so tough. It's really bad. It's really bad if you're struggling and you're using that to make it better, right? Trying to put out a fire with gasoline, basically, right? And so I have nothing against alcohol, but it was horrible for me. Looking back, but since personal development was that thing that saved my life, and I knew that other people were struggling, I felt obligated to share much of what I was learning with other people who were out there, and especially for veterinary professionals. And so I basically extrapolated a lot of what I learned, because like if you look behind me here, you see this bookshelf with all these different books on it, and my PlayStation. I love PlayStation too, love video games. But anyway, on the very bottom, before, that's the only level of that shelf that had books on it, and they were all my veterinary textbooks, right? And so since 2016, I've accumulated probably over 200 like books at this point. On my Kindle, I've got like probably 40, 50, 60. On my Amazon's Audible, I've got like over 100 and something books. But basically, just the whole learning process, I extrapolated a lot of that and I applied it to veterinary medicine because I knew there wasn't that much out there. There were a few people who were doing it, and I was inspired by those people, like I said. And I really wanted to share that information with other people because in the business world, like personal development in the entrepreneur world, it's very commonplace, right? Like they have tons of conferences and just events, whether virtual, in person, just about building yourself up as an actual person. And the only one that I experienced in veterinary medicine was the Veterinary Leadership Conference. And there were only like 300 people there. And so there's more than 300 people in vet med. You know what I mean? And so we're falling short, essentially. And if you go to VMX or the big AVMA conferences, things like that, like 90% of the talks are clinical, which is really important because like we're clinical professionals. We need that. But the personal development, in my opinion, it's equally as important so that we don't actually lose great clinicians to leaving the profession or suicide or whatever it happens to be, right? And so anyway, yeah, so that's kind of how I pivoted into my next stage. I co-founded a company with Renee Michelle. She's a vet assistant. She worked at the second hospital that I worked at, and we were on this similar path. We created Get Motivated, veterinary wellbeing solutions. And then and that was in 2018. And then in 2019, we created Get Motivated University, the world's first school of wellbeing specifically for veterinary professionals. And then in 2022, we created the Veterinary Burnout Prep Certification Program. And so the very first thing we kind of did was go get our coaching certification, to be certified life coaches. And then we started doing a lot of speaking. So we joined Toastmasters. It's a small club. You familiar with Toastmasters?
I am. Yep. Yep.
Okay, yeah. So Toastmasters is really cool. People taught me how to speak there. It was just great. More networking, more meeting super cool people who are doing super cool things. And so, yeah, Get Motivated just serves the veterinary profession and helping them to learn personal development. And I believe that well-being is your ability to thrive despite the challenges. And I think personal development is kind of that thing that helps you thrive despite the challenges. I just kind of shifted it over and extrapolated a lot.
Yeah. One of the things I think about burnout and getting just to dark places in general is a lot of times feeling alone. And so I wonder, did you ever like meet someone, like what kind of sparked, and sometimes we just get excited and want to share what has helped us, but did you start meeting other people where you were like, oh, like it's not just me, it's other people as well are struggling here? Like, did you have that moment where you were finding other people were struggling in veterinary medicine?
So I didn't really find a community of struggling people. Any veterinary community, a community was struggling people,
For
basically,
me, yeah,
right? At,
they were all around
at,
you. Well,
at this point, yeah. But when you would go to like the veterinary leadership conference, you see the people who are like focusing on these minute issues that you may not even notice if you graduate, you go to work for a hospital, and you're not branching out intentionally to find these different things, because no one ever came to my hospital, right, to talk about well-being or burnout or anything like that. And so I couldn't even like frame it as I'm burnt out. I couldn't even frame it as I have poor well-being because I just didn't even have the terminology. And so when you get outside of your regular hospital environment or outside of your community, then people are talking about it because those are like the hot topics of the day, essentially. And so it was like the economy of VetNet was kind of struggling a little bit at the time. DEI was a hot topic. Leadership, we need more leadership all the time. And then well-being was one as well. And that kind of opened my eyes to it. And then the AVMA actually had 10 veterinarians who were the future leaders. So I was an emerging leader. The future leaders were like a more organized program. And their project that they chose was, it created like a wellness something and another, right? I forget exactly what it was, that they could actually share with veterinary professionals. And so I was kind of looking at the future leaders tackling this big project of well-being and wellness within vet med. And so I kind of knew that that was a big thing. And just through the conferences, I knew that people were struggling with burnout, compassion fatigue, and things like that. I mean, that's kind of how I knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might be a really good person to pose this question because this is something I've kind of been watching. You and I graduated vet school about the same time. I think you are 2013, I'm 2014 grad. And so we've kind of seen an evolution of where we're talking more about
Yes.
this.
Yes.
And I think thanks to social media and things, this is becoming even more public about the challenges within veterinary medicine around mental health. And I am seeing more and more comments coming from concerned parents of children who want to become veterinary professionals. So not only the people who might be interested in veterinary medicine might be concerned, but like the parents are posting on, all I
Oh,
could hear about is that veterinary professionals have high suicide, and my kid wants to be one of these people. Like, what do I do?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so like there's I guess the question is coming from, this is important to talk about. It is important to learn how to work on yourself so that when things that risk burnout, yet you are prepared and you know how to handle them. Like you said, when you first left vet school, you had no idea, you had no preparation, you had no tools, no nothing, and probably didn't fully understand what was about to hit you. Um,
Right. Yeah.
right? And so now we do. But then
Mhm.
also we have this external reputation now
Yeah, I
for
know.
having this challenge. So how do we, and I will pull the out word balance right this second, but how do we equip people with the tools and the
Yeah.
understanding that we do have a challenging profession?
Right.
But it's
Yeah.
a profession we love and is very rewarding, and that we don't need to discourage people from coming into it. We just need to prepare them when they come in. And maybe you can tell me what your thoughts are, where we are right now with well-being and in the profession and the appearance, the reputations and things. But so feel free to comment on that first, but then also like, what can we
Sure.
do next? What do you see as kind of the next phase of this area?
That's such an amazing question, right? Because it's partially frustrating a little bit because we are literally losing people who would have become veterinary professionals, maybe veterinarians, and would have been great at the job, but they are deciding to go elsewhere because of the well-being stuff. And I think sometimes with social media, like you're saying, is that if you don't, so one thing about Get Motivated and myself and Renee is that we talk about well-being in such a positive way. We talk about burnout in such a positive way, or and maybe positive is not the right word, in an empowering way, right? And one of my quotes is veterinary burnout is real, but it doesn't have to be your reality. And so I think that's the major thing. It's all about preparedness and preparation because the challenges aren't going to go away. But I remember a conversation that I actually had with a young lady that I used to work with. I do a lot of relief work now. And I remember asking her, because I used to be on NC State's admissions committee for 4 years as well. And so I'm really into helping people come into the profession if I can't help them out. And I asked her if she had thought about going to veterinary school. And she said, well, I used to want to be a veterinarian, but this veterinarian that I worked for told me that I should probably go do something else because it's really hard, the challenges, the pay's not good, blah, 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 blah. And so she chose to go into to be a human surgical technician, assistant, or whatever they call them, right? And so there's a person gone, and she was great. She was great with the clients, and she obviously loved animals, right? And that was frustrating to me because the people who are burnt out sometimes, they're burnt out and having a bad experience. So they're sharing that with other people. They're sharing it on social media, which is great to be vulnerable, but you won't find in any of my content where I talk about my story and only leave it at the negative down place because or else people will see that many of the books behind me and the people that I listen to, probably like the people you listen to, my favorite category is people who overcame severe adversity to achieve great success. Because I believe that veterinary medicine offers us an opportunity to overcome challenges and difficulty and adversity. I look at it the way Kobe Bryant kind of looked at a difficult team that he was going to be facing and that he was going to get better, right? It was going to prepare, he was going to grow from the challenge of that. And so one of the things I like to talk about for vet medicine is that it really offers you an opportunity to advance yourself as a human being in general. There's so many difficulties about the profession that if you can prepare yourself well and find ways to actually thrive despite those challenges, that it makes life outside of veterinary medicine even easier because I think that just being a human in general is a little bit I'm not going to say easier, but it's different than veterinary medicine, and that veterinary medicine comes with a lot of challenges just by its very nature, right? Sometimes pets die, you're doing surgery, sometimes those surgeries go poorly, or maybe you make a mistake because there's so much to learn, and the animals can't talk to you and tell you that it's this part of my body that's hurting or whatever. And so on the euthanasias, right, which can be something that lifts you up for some veterinary professionals, something that kind of pulls you down depending on who you are. But the point is, I kind of look at veterinary medicine as a training ground for becoming really good at life in general. And yeah, I like to encourage people for all those parents out there, if a parent finds themselves here at this podcast, I don't think that burnout has to be the experience of anybody in veterinary medicine. I think that anyone can overcome burnout. I think it's got to be a thing where you prioritize yourself and you have to take action and you actually have to go do something, right? I think you just could continue to show up as you have been. Maybe you get lucky and things just get super easy, but I'm not worried about easy or hard. When I go into a hospital these days, I'm like, whatever it is, it's not going to decrease my well-being, and I've got the tools to back that up,
Yeah.
I'm ready for it.
I like that term empowered. And I know
Yeah.
maybe it's me, maybe I overuse it, but I think that is such a strong word in that it doesn't put us in a victim mindset. It puts us in a, okay, like, let's look at the situation. What can we do next? Right? Like, what do we
Yes.
have to work with? What are some options? Because I truly believe that there are options. Like,
Yes.
maybe they're not all amazing options, but there are options.
Oh, for
Uh,
sure. Yeah.
and I think that veterinary medicine, and maybe this is what you're kind of going with too, does allow us to have lots of options. Like the example that you gave with euthanasia, where euthanasia may just put one person in a terrible mindset, and another person looks at it as like, I feel like I am giving this family the best gift possible. That is
Yes.
good data. Like if you
Yeah. Yes.
which version of you are go away from the one that you are not and go towards the one you are. And I
Yes.
think veterinary medicine allows us to have those opportunities. And the other thing is, there are individuals who are really, really good human beings in our profession. You talked about meeting some of these. A lot of people love to introduce, especially if you're young, like people love you.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah.
um they like introducing, right? Because I think it's a profession where we're very caring. We come into it because we care about a bigger purpose, and so those are really cool individuals to be around. And I think
Yes.
with all those options, with good people around you, you're able to get in the right direction. And on top of it is you still need to work on yourself. You still have to take that empowerment and do something with it. And if you're combining understanding yourself, you can start to find the path in a world of options. If that makes
Yes. Absolutely. 100%. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know we're about to run out of time. So, where you are right now in your career, you're still doing Vet Motivated, you're doing some relief work. What are you kind of excited to be working on right now? And what are you excited about with your personal future, but also the future of veterinary medicine?
Oh my goodness. So right now I'm excited about my family. Like I have a 1 year old. We just turned one a couple of days ago on the 17th. And so I'm really excited about spending as much time as humanly possible with baby Atlas, right? And then I've got a 6 year old daughter and a 10-year-old daughter as well. Just spending a lot of time with them. In terms of with Get Motivated, I'm so excited about continuing to grow the Veterinary Burnout Prep Certification Program. We've got like over 1,200 people in the program at this point. Lots of people who are coming through and they're getting results both like quantitatively and qualitatively, which is great. So they're feeling better. We had some people come back to the profession after taking the program, and some people who were thinking about leaving the profession, and now they're staying, and not only staying, but having like better experiences. And that just, it really just lights me up, right? Because I know that the stuff that we're teaching, that they have agency basically, right? Because the profession may not change, but you can change your experience essentially. And then we've also got our Veterinary Burnout Preparedness Summit of the Year coming up, which will be our second annual. So we did the first one in February of 2025, and the second one will probably be around February, March, April of 2026. And so we're planning for that right now. Really excited about it. It was a 2-day event last year. We had some really cool speakers like Amy Newfield, Michael Shirley, Tom Seco, and CJ Burnett come in to speak as well. Myself, Renee, Dr. Sonia Olson is really good wellbeing person too. So we'll have different speakers this year, more than likely. It's some really, really cool speakers. Hopefully, Megan Spreek will be one of our speakers this year at Summit of the Year. But I'm really excited about just continuing to find new and creative ways and entertaining ways and exciting ways and positive ways that feel good, right? To share everything that I know about burnout, preparedness, well-being, and Dr. Feldman talks about mental health. He's our mental health professional on staff, and so it's very rewarding for myself personally. And I'll probably do this until the day I die. Honestly, I don't see myself stopping, so that'll be that. And then in personal life, we're going to Japan in the spring. So that's exciting. It'll be my first time like going truly intercontinental. So I've been like Barbados and Costa Rica and Nicaragua and Panama before and Jamaica, but never truly to another continent. So I'm really looking forward to that in the spring. Yeah.
That is super exciting. That's another way to, we talked about kind of stepping back and being able to reflect.
Yeah.
Traveling to a whole different culture
Ooh,
is also a
yeah.
great way to step back and just listen and reflect and all the things. So I'm super excited for that trip for you. Well, I think you already kind of shared a little bit about gratitude. I usually like to end on gratitude, but well, I'll end with a slightly different question. Let me see how I want to ask
Okay.
this. And that is like thinking back on your personal journey so far, what do you think is one? I won't say it has to be the top because that's too hard of a question.
Sure.
What is one piece of wisdom that you would give others in veterinary professional to have a happy and fulfilling life like you are right now, where you're full of gratitude, you're in a place where you're like, I want to do this until I die? What piece of advice would you give to people who are looking for that?
Yes. So number one, and just remembering that vet med, it does not suck, right? I still believe it's one of the most rewarding and prestigious professions on the face of the planet, with so many opportunities to fill yourself up, to fill your cup. Um, there are like two skills that I would just throw out there for people to really go on a deep dive on these. But the first one is mindfulness, right? Your ability to really be in the present moment. That allows you to enjoy that puppy that's in front of you, right? And then perspective, right? Perspective is that thing that allows you to get better instead of bitter from the challenges that you're facing, and to see opportunity where others see chaos, right? And where maybe you saw chaos before. And so as you're going through the rest of your life and veterinary career, to take extreme amounts of agency and to realize that you have more control over your career and the trajectory of that career and how that experience actually feels, then you may actually realize at this moment, and the moment you really grab the experience by the horn, so to speak, and just really go down that path, keep listening to Megan's podcast, keep listening to all the podcasts that you can find, just keep learning and growing and expanding, because I believe that if you're really looking for it, that the right things that you need will come to you. And to never give up. And if you have to like switch careers, if you have to switch practices, if you have to leave, if you have to change and go do something else because what you're doing right now isn't working for you, that's totally fine. But make sure that you change yourself first or concurrently, right? Do the personal development part of it and make sure you get the learning lesson from wherever you are so that you don't end up in the same place with a different name and location.
Dr. Quincy's story is proof that rock bottom doesn't have to be the end of the road. Sometimes it's the beginning of a completely new way of thinking, living, and showing up in the world. VetMed is rewarding and challenging, but you don't have to feel lost, broken, or stuck, at least for very long. These feelings trigger a sign to pause and look for resources. Dr. Quincy is an example of someone offering support, tools, and a growth mindset. He showed us that well-being isn't about avoiding hard things. It's about building the mindset and skills to thrive despite them. We can walk into life equipped with mindfulness, perspective, and the courage to take responsibility for our own growth, as well as a community around us who can lift us up and not tear us down. Thank you, Dr. Quincy, for your honesty, vulnerability, and for the work you're doing through Get Motivated and the Veterinary Burnout Preparedness Program to support this profession and the people inside of it. I also want to thank our fan and supporter of the podcast, Dr. Kelly Cooper. If you want to contribute to the podcast just a little bit a month, click the support the show link in the show notes. And if this conversation impacted you, share it. That simple message could make a world of difference for someone. Until next time, let's keep reimagining what's possible in veterinary life.